Today we will learn and reflect on the writings of Musonius Rufus. Like Socrates, Musonius Rufus did not write down his teachings, but they've been passed down by his students, mainly by Epictetus, but it is those teachings that were remembered by other students that we will ponder today. You may ask, how can we benefit when we ponder the stoicism of Musonius Rufus? Living a godly and moral life is all that mattered to the Stoic philosophers. In this video, we will ponder what Rufus reveals to us about forgiveness, obedience, exile, and other philosophical writings, plus illustrations of how the Christian tradition shares many of these same values. At the end of our talk, we will discuss the sources used for this video and my blogs that also cover this topic. Please, we welcome interesting questions in the comments. Sometimes these generate short videos of their own. Let us learn and reflect together. Musonius Rufus is best known through the lectures of his marvelous student Epictetus, who was a former slave of a former slave. Epictetus tells us so many delightful vignettes and teachings of his beloved Rufus that we cannot really distinguish between the thoughts of Epictetus and Musonius Rufus. This is the video that we've uploaded on the philosophy of Epictetus. In addition to the writings of Epictetus, a small collection of the writings of Musonius Rufus have come down to us from antiquity in an anthology by the Greek Stobaeus, and a few fragments quoted in other ancient works. We know that Rufus was exiled by Nero and came in and out of exile under the succeeding emperors, and Tacitus mentions that he helped negotiate several treaties, and we know that he taught in Greek and that he taught Epictetus. Other than that, we know very little about the life of Musonius Rufus. We do not even know what Musonius Rufus looks like. Rufus and Epictetus sound more like father and son than master and student, so close is their stoicism. The similarities between Rufus and Epictetus and the Epistles of St Paul and the writings of the early church fathers are simply amazing. We can see that Epictetus and St Paul lived in roughly the same period, but there is no certainty that they ever corresponded. However, St Paul and Rufus and Epictetus all contributed to the philosophical discussions of the Roman Empire. When someone wrongs us, should we file suit or should we forgive and forbear? Rufus advises us that those who do not know what is really good and what is really shameful, and who are overly concerned with their own fame, these people think that they are being injured if someone glares at them, or laughs at them, or hits them, or mocks them. But a man who is thoughtful and sensible, as a philosopher should be, is disturbed by none of these things. Who suffers more, the person who is wronged or the wrongdoer? The wrongdoer suffers shame, not the wronged. Rufus tells us that it is petty to count wrongs like sheep. If he is virtuous, the wronged will calmly and quietly forbear what has happened, since that is how the magnanimous behave. Plotting how to bite back someone who bites and return evil against the evildoer is characteristic of a beast, not a man. This reminds us of our favorite observation made by Epictetus. He tells us of someone who stole his lamp one night, but he got the better end of the exchange. For Epictetus only lost his lamp, but he kept his faith. The man who stole his lamp in exchange for the lamp, he consented to become a thief, becoming faithless. This Stoic advice is similar to the Gospel, where Jesus counsels us to turn the cheek, to walk 2 miles when compelled to walk 1, and to give up the coat when the cloak is requested. As St. Maximus the Confessor teaches us, we should not only forgive our enemies, we should be eager to forgive our enemies. One of the commandments of the Decalogue exhorts us to honor our father and mother. Musonius Rufus agrees. A young man who wanted to study philosophy with Rufus, but whose father forbade him, asked Musonius Rufus, "Should we always obey our parents, or are there situations when you should not obey?" Rufus responded that children should obey their parents, and he agrees that they should, but to examine the question further, you must ask, what does it mean to obey? What is disobedience? If the son is gravely ill and the father forbids him to consult with the doctor and the son does anyway, is he disobedient? If the father is a robber and orders his son to be his accomplice and he refuses, is he disobedient? Rufus answers, "It is true the act of disobeying and the person who disobeys are shameful and blameworthy. But refusing to do what one should not do always brings praise, not shame. And so if someone refuses to obey a person who is wicked, unjust, or shameful, whether that person is his father, ruler, or a despot, he is not disobeying. He is not acting unjustly. He is not a wrongdoer. Rather, a disobedient person is one who ignores or disobeys orders that are right, honorable, and beneficial. Indeed, when we are commanded to honor our father and our mother, we are also commanded to respect anyone who is in a position of authority, whether it be bosses, teachers, policemen, everyone. In regards to the original question, Rufus asks, if your father, who knows nothing about philosophy, forbids you to study philosophy, but you know and understand the meaning of philosophy, should you listen to him? Or should you instead explain to him that he is not giving you good advice? Rufus counsels patience. Rufus discourages this young man from rash and heated arguments. Rufus encourages that he convince his father about the value of philosophy by example. Rufus advises, as a student of philosophy, he will be most eager to help his father in every way, and he will be conspicuously self-disciplined and courteous. In his dealings with his father, he will never be quarrelsome or self-regarding, and he will never be rash, rebellious, or angry. Furthermore, he will always control his tongue, stomach, and sexual appetites, and will be brave enough to face calamities and pain. He will be careful to discern what is right and not be deceived by what only seems to be right. He will gladly forsake all pleasures for his father, and for him will shoulder hardships. Who should not pray to the gods to have such a son? And who, if he had such a son, would not love him? But even if the father resists and locks up his son so he cannot go off to study philosophy, how can he prevent him from studying philosophy? Rufus explains, we seek philosophy with our soul, and that little part of it we call our intellect. Nobody can prevent you from studying philosophy, but that is simply the art of being pleased by the good rather than the shameful, or from choosing the good and refusing the shameful. Do these, and you will be studying philosophy. You do not need to run off to school to be a philosopher. You do not need to don a cloak. You don't need long hair. You don't need to be eccentric. Real philosophers only need to contemplate what you need to do to live a godly life. Rufus also advises us that we can live a godly life even when we have been exiled. As background, exile was common in the ancient world. It was common for leading citizens who were out of favor politically in ancient Greece. At a certain time of the year, the assembly of all voting males would vote to ostracize the leading citizen or send him into exile to a neighboring city-state. Rufus adds that in exile we may associate with our friends, our true friends, those friends who would never betray us or abandon us, but those who shun us are not true friends. We are better off without those who are not truly friends. The most important question Rufus asks is, how can exile be an obstacle to the acquisition of virtue, when no one was ever hindered from the knowledge and practice of what is needful because of exile? The wise, on the other hand, are gracious. The wise look for the good. The wise are forgiving. Those who are evil find fault with their neighbors, but find excuses for their own faults. While those who seek to love their neighbor seek to see the good in their neighbor's hearts, excusing their faults while searching their own hearts and repenting of their own shortcomings. On exile, Rufus concludes, certainly the exile is not prevented from possessing courage and justice simply because he is banished, nor is he denied self-control, nor any other virtue that brings honor and benefit to the man with a good reputation worthy of praise. If you are good, you will never be harmed or degraded by exile, for your virtues will help you and sustain you. But if you are bad, it is the evil that harms you and not the exile. And the misery you feel in exile is the product of evil, not of the exile. Today, ordinary people often suffer from the rejection from types of exile that you find in the modern world, and they will find the advice of Rufus refreshing. For instance, if someone whose work is suddenly picked at and criticized by a company that had employed him for decades, and who was unceremoniously shown to the door by security guards, is that not a form of exile? When a man is served papers and is humiliated by being thrown out of his house by a vengeful divorcing spouse, is that not a form of exile? How much we are at fault for our rejection, for our exile, and although it does matter, and we should always learn from our sins and mistakes, what matters most is whether we can become better persons through our experiences. What matters most is that we are not bitter and forbear and forgive, and what matters most is whether or not we lead godly and virtuous lives. Since we are mentioning divorce and exile, and if you get thrown out of your house because your divorce is definitely in exile, the picture we're showing is divorce care. And you can find divorce support groups free of charge in most parts of the country. I've been active in this ministry for many years. Rufus asks, like a good Stoic, why should the exile lament his condition? And why should he complain? How is he oppressed? Has he been exiled from the warmth of the sun? Has he been exiled from being refreshed by the rain? Has he been excluded from the society of men? A Christian example of both, how we can lead a godly life in exile, and an example of a philosopher who can lead a godly life even under the most trying circumstances, is the life of St. John the Russian. He was a devout Russian soldier who was captured and enslaved to the family of a Muslim Turk commander. When pressed to convert, he confessed he would sooner die than renounce his Lord or his Orthodox faith. John was assigned to work and live in the stable as a slave. Reminded that his Lord was born in a stable, he rejoiced in his little corner of the stable, knowing that in the evenings he would have the freedom to spend many long hours in prayer, praying earnestly those Psalms of David that he had memorized, for he owned nothing, and he ate little, prayed often. Every Sunday he took Holy Communion and kept all-night vigils at a local Christian church. St. John the Russian lived a joyful life of humility, kindness, and charity to his fellow servants and his masters, and his devotion brought prosperity to the house of his master. Having gained riches, his master decided to make a pilgrimage to Mecca, for he was a Muslim. While he was gone, his wife cooked a piping hot plate of rice pilaf, saying out loud that she wished her husband were home to enjoy his favorite dish. John, who was waiting on the table, responded that he could have it brought to Mecca for him. The wife just laughed, thinking that he would just donate it to the other poor Christians nearby, so she let him have the dish. And John prayed that his master would enjoy the dish. The next month, his master returned from Mecca with the plate with his monogrammed initials. He said his plate of piping hot rice pilaf appeared in his locked room in Mecca after he had finished the day's devotions. His master then offered John a nearby house where he could live as a freedman, but John refused, choosing to live the rest of his short life in the stable in prayer. And we will conclude with a small collection of sayings attributed to Musonius Rufus. Rufus advises us, speak of shameful things and you will lose your reluctance to do them. Also, if you work hard to do what is right, do not be upset by roadblocks. And you will deserve respect from everyone if you start by respecting yourself. And we have some final thoughts from Musonius Rufus. Only the man who learns to want nothing in every circumstance is truly wealthy. Don't expect to tell others what they should do when they know that you do what you shouldn't. This is particularly good advice for parents, and a good reason for parents to strive to set a good example for their children. For children, do not do as you say, they do as you do. And talking about the sources that we use for this video, Amazon sells this very readable, though very slim, collection of the writings of Musonius Rufus, and he is not included in the Loeb Classical Library. If you enjoy these writings of Rufus, you will enjoy the writings of Epictetus that we have in the Stoic six-pack we also got from Amazon. And the only thing I don't like about this book is that the Stoic six-pack does not include the paragraph numbers. Professor Luke Timothy Johnson turned me on to reading the Stoic philosophers, and we highly recommend these Great Courses lectures. Unfortunately, they're not on the Great Courses Plus. Please click on the link in the description for our blogs on Rufus in the description below. And please click on the links for other interesting videos that will broaden your knowledge and improve your soul. Thank you.